From out of the West comes Red Ryder, America's famous fighting cowboy.
Well, it's not often that I get a chance to interview an actor who worked in films, television, and radio. And when I say radio, I mean radio with a capital R. When radio was a mighty power in the land, as Orson Welles liked to refer to it, the golden age of radio. But fortunately, today is one of those days because former child actor Tommy Cook joins us today. He's probably best remembered as Little Beaver in the Adventures of Red Ryder movie serials and the radio series, and, of course, for the 1946 film Tarzan and the Leopard Woman, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen. Johnny Weissmuller, of course, in the lead part there, and the 1941 movie serial Jungle Girl, among so many other projects. He's also had a long and distinguished career in Saturday morning cartoons in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, doing voiceover work. Tommy Cook, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, I know you started out very, very young, so I want to take you right back to the very beginning. And I guess your career really starts with Arch Oboler, doesn't it?
Yeah, he was so very important in my early life. Working his shows, Every Man's Theater and Plays for Americans, were the happiest times of my life.
Yeah.
Radio was the king in the good old days when there was no television. Radio was bigger than films. I mean, you had 70 to 80 million people each week tuning in to their favorite dramatic shows or comedy shows on their Philco radio,
yeah.
You know. And the most brilliant, the nicest, the best people I ever worked with were in radio.
Yeah.
I mean, Sunset and Vine was the place to be with NBC, and down the corner at Gower and Sunset, there was CBS Studios with Brittenham's restaurant right next door where everybody would, enjoy some food and
Sure.
conversation and then hurry on into the studios to do their shows. I was Little Alexander on the Blondie show, Studio C at CBS.
He's getting more like you every day.
Yeah.
In spite of all I can do to prevent it.
Yeah.
I just hope he doesn't latch on to more of your bad habits. You know, Dagwood, if I ever see him with one of those super Bumstead sandwiches, I'll scream.
Hey, Mom, look at this sandwich.
God, those were such great years. People like Elliot Lewis, Hans Conried,
Right.
Byron Kane, Pat McGeehan, Agnes Moorehead, Lorene Tunnell, Mary Jane Croft. I can go on and on.
Oh,
and
yeah,
on.
fantastic.
And it wasn't a matter of just reading a script. I left out one person, Mercedes McCambridge.
Oh,
In
sure.
the good old radio days, it
Yeah.
was Mercedes. When she got into films and did Giant and won her Academy Award, it was Mercedes. But she was Mercedes McCambridge, Arch Oboler's favorite female actress. And I recall doing a radio show with her. We were on opposite sides of the same mic. And she just took that script and pressed it against her chest. And she just played to me like we were on Broadway, like
Right.
we were doing a play.
Yeah.
And so my memories, and of course working with Arch, he wrote for his stock company. I think Arch had, Orson Welles had his own stock company, of course, with
Right.
Agnes Moorehead, et cetera, et cetera. Norman Corwin didn't really have he was mostly a writer-director and did films,
Yeah.
I think he was nominated for an Oscar for a screenplay at MGM. But Arch had the most wonderful stock company. And every week, a different member of his stock company would star on his NBC shows, Every Man's Theater and the award-winning Place for Americans on
right.
NBC. And, it was interesting how I got together with Arch Oboler. My mother saw an ad in a magazine about having an audition, a free audition, at the old NBC Artist Bureau. May Reagan, good friend, headed up the bureau there. So my mom took me over there, and they taped my voice. And a couple of weeks later, I got a call to come in and to audition for Arch Oboler. I got the role only because I had the youngest sounding voice, but I could also, it called for a little boy with a German accent, and somehow, I don't know how, but I could do a little German accent. And so it was just a small role. Now, after the show, Arch comes out. Alla Nazimova was the star of the show, the great Russian actress. So Arch comes out after, thanks everybody, he says, I got to go to Chicago next week, my old home grounds. Got to do a show starring Dickie Hyland. He's a good young actor, but I'd just rather stay in Hollywood. I don't really want to go back to Chicago right now. So Alla whispers in his ear, he says, well, if you don't want to go to Chicago, take a chance on this little Tommy Cook. So Arch does, and the next week I star for Arch in a play called Problem Papa, and my father is Howard Duff.
Wow.
My mother is Mercedes McCambridge. Gordon Jenkins doing the music. How about that?
That's fantastic.
Oh, God.
You just can't beat it.
No,
there's no way.
Can't beat it. So then I stayed on. I became a part of his stock company, and I can remember doing plays for Americans that I started on with Arch, and it was about a young kid, and his father told him, it was during the Second World War,
right.
just around the time that they signed the armistice, and the little kid's father kept telling him that America's in trouble, and we all got to help America. So this little kid goes to the enlistment of the army and tries to get in the army. They go away, laddie boy, go away.
Right.
So he goes to the Navy, and the same thing. They say, go away, kid, go away, don't bother us. He goes to the Air Force. Anyway, he ends up at a park, and he hears the guy talking, and he's talking about a letter that he received from the government. He's been drafted into the army,
right?
And he says, "Well, why are they taking me? I don't have anything against anyone. I have never done anything wrong. Why would they take me in?" And the kid hears this, and he says, "You've got a letter to join the army?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, give it to me. I want to join the army. My dad says that we all got to help out." And it was Hans Conried playing this guy.
Wow.
And he looks at the kid and he says, son, just go on home, will you please? I'll take care of this. We've got to protect our nation. I'll do the best I can." And the music comes up with Gordon Jenkins. Oh, God. It was so beautifully written by Arch Oboler. Oh, God.
I'm getting chills now just hearing you talk about it. My goodness.
Studio H is the studio where we did all the Arch Oboler shows, right next to Lum and Abner, Studio G. Oh, that was incredible. I can just see that long hallway at NBC. Studio A, Burns and Allen. Studio B, Bing Crosby.
Oh.
Going down the hall. Studio C, Red Skelton. Studio D, Charlie McCarthy and Edgar Bergen. Right. Oh, my gosh.
I know.
Those were the shows.
Charlie, tonight, a tribute is being paid to one of the greatest entertainers in show business. Well, thank you. Shouldn't have gone to all this trouble. For just little old wonderful me. Well, it's not you. We're going to salute a man who is celebrating his 20th anniversary in show business. Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby? You mean old Lumpy Larynx? Yes. And it's a great honor to be here. When I was asked to appear on this show, do you know what I said? Yeah, how much? No.
I got to tell you a story.
Sure.
On one of the Bing Crosby shows, Al Jolson was the guest of honor.
Uh-huh.
They just came out with the Jolson story, of course, starring Larry Parks.
Right.
But now Al Jolson has come back to be the great one again. Everybody wants them as a guest on their show. And so he's a guest on the Bing Crosby show, and he's always known for wearing the turtlenecks. Well, in those early years, as I still do today, I loved Al Jolson. So I put on a turtleneck, and I sneak out of rehearsal, and I go across the hallway to Studio B when the Bing Crosby show was just about to start. And I'm standing there just a couple of feet from Al Jolson, ready to go out on the stage, and he's perspiring like crazy. And he says to somebody there, he says, "I don't feel good. I don't know whether I can make it. I don't know whether I can do it. Mr. Jolson, time for you to go on." He goes on, does the show, and guess what? He gets rid of everybody. He stays on for 2.5 hours.
Right.
Entertaining, doing all his numbers, kept the piano guy there, and did his singing and just entertained the crowd. I mean, something else.
Oh, yeah.
There was, what was the charity group that was a celebrity charity group? Anyway, they were out of San Francisco, and I can't think of the name, but you'll come up with it maybe. But anyway, all the stars offered their services because it was charity. And when they heard that Al Jolson was going to be one of the stars, nobody would go on after Al Jolson. They said, we'll go on before but not after, because when Jolson goes on, that's it,
Right.
Everything else is dead.
Right.
So they put Jolson on at midnight, thinking, well, the audience will be so tired they'll be drifting out, no problem. Well, Jolson comes on at midnight, right? And you know the rest.
Of course.
Stays there for a couple of hours and just enchanted the crowd. I still say that Jolson was the greatest entertainer of all time. I played Jolson as a boy on the Lux Radio Theater. Scotty Beckett, my dear friend, played the young Jolson in the Jolson story with Larry Parks at Columbia. But I played Al Jolson on the radio show for Lux Radio Theater, where Jolson played himself. Ah, God.
Wow.
What's your name, Sonny?
Asa Jolson.
Where'd you learn to sing like that?
Well, I sing in my father's choir. Used to cantor at the synagogue.
Where?
At the synagogue. Holy smoke, I'm supposed to be there.
After the show, I keep thinking about that kid. Then I get an idea. I could use him in my act. He'd be great.
Mr. Martin, I think I know what is best for my son.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Asa. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye, Mr. Martin.
So, singing in the theater. Asa, you will never go to that place again. You promise me?
I can't promise, Papa. I can't.
Go to your room.
He came to me later and he says, "I like you, kid. I like what you do. I want to do something for you. I want to help you." I said, "Thanks, Mr. Jolson. Thank you." Well, shortly after, he went back to Korea and entertained the troops, and he came back and he got very sick and he died. But
it's such a shame because he was riding high on that comeback because of that film. Yeah.
I did a for radio. I still have the 8x10 glossy. a charity radio show. I think it was for the Jewish War Relief. Al Jolson sang, John Garfield narrated, and I starred in the show.
Wow.
Oh, boy. Yeah. I got a picture with me with Al Jolson during that show, and then shot Lorene Tuttle was in the show, too. But can you imagine being in a show with Jolson and John Garfield? When I was very young, I looked just like John Garfield. I tested for him twice for films. First time I was so young, I was just too young, and the second one, just didn't get it. But of course, later on, Bobby Blake and I played brothers to Humoresque with John Garfield starring and Joan Crawford at Warner Brothers. So, the stars of yesterday, those were the stars.
Absolutely.
I mean, come on. Advanced technology has peppered the screen with over-the-top special effects and gadget-weary madness that doesn't really play into the story, but it's just there for the sole purpose of inundating the viewer with death and destruction. And I still go, I like uplifting, character-driven stories. The superstars of yesterday, Gable and Lee, Bogart, Bergman, Tracy, Hepburn, Charlie Chaplin. Was there anyone ever better than Charlie Chaplin? He was a genius. Garbo, the Barrymores, amazing little Shirley Temple, the old MGM musicals, Fred Astaire and Kelly, Judy Garland. Oh, my gosh.
WFDU FM.
That's us, and our guest today is actor, producer, writer Tommy Cook. He's done it all, and you know what? We've talked about your radio days, and we're kind of running out of time. We haven't even gotten into your film work, so very quickly, because I promised everybody that we would talk about the Adventures of Red Ryder and your role as Little Beaver.
Right. In 1940,
yeah,
I auditioned, and I got the part of Little Beaver in a 12-episode serial at Republic Studios in the Valley.
Right.
And at that time, they were one of the top studios doing westerns and stuff. John Wayne worked out of there. Great. Herbert Yates was he was the producer. He was the owner.
Right.
And the greatest stuntmen in the world, Davy Sharp, Yakima Canute, the greatest stunt people in the world, did different stunts on that film. I'll always remember, I think it was Davy Sharp. He's on his horse, and there's a chase, and he's with a carriage, horses being driven so fast, and he gets off his horse, and he catches the rear of the carriage, and he pulls himself around and gets into the carriage. Come on. You don't do those kind of stunts now. They're all CGI, computer generated and everything. Oh, gosh. They were so nice to me. But so that was such a great experience. Don Redberry played Red Ryder. Everybody wondered how he got the role. Well, he was under contract to Republic, and it was very short. And Herbert Yates says, why aren't we using this guy? I'm paying him every week. This Don Barry. Put him to work.
Right.
So they made him. They dyed his hair red and gave him riding lessons. And I was always doing horseback riding, so learning to ride bareback for Little Beaver was not tough for me at all. And the picture was directed. They had a duo directors, William Whitney and John English. And William Whitney had horses at his home. And on weekends, he would invite me over, and he had a little Indian horse, very similar to Papoose, that I rode in the film. and I would go riding at his home. Can you imagine those glory days?
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
It
in
was
1942, there's the old ABC Blue Network. They were on Vine Street with offices, but they didn't have a studio, so they did their shows at NBC. So I take it back, going back talking about Arch Oboler. We didn't do the shows in Studio H. We did them on the larger stages. But for Red Ryder in 1942, that was Studio H that we did all the Red Ryder shows.
Right.
And it was a smaller studio, you know. But we had 3 special effects guys that shot off the guns and did all the special sound effects and everything. But we did it Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays for Langendorf Bread, 7:30 at night. And later on, after a year or two, we went on the Mutual Broadcasting System. The Lone Ranger was playing there, and then when it came time to renegotiate, they couldn't come to terms, and so they brought on Red Ryder, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. So we were doing the show 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And I got too old.
Right.
And John Wilder came in. He was doing some good radio work, and he did the Little Beaver role for the rest of its time on the air. But right from the outset in 1942, I met up with somebody who just passed away, Frank Brzee, who was like my big brother.
Yep.
We went to junior high together, John Burroughs Junior High and L.A. High School, and he amassed one of the all-time great memorabilia radio collections. It's now in the Thousand Oaks Library. Norman Corwin said it was the greatest collection he had ever seen. And he would play Little Beaver when I took off to do a television show or a film. And we were great, great buddies from then on. He just passed away, and I've been close to his wife, Bobby Brzee. And we just went down on the weekend to Long Beach, right by the Queen Mary ship. And we took a boat cruise out into the international waters. And Bobby let the ashes of Frank drift into the ocean. I was really broken up.
Sure.
And but it was a lovely event, and nice to celebrate and pay our respects to Frank Brzee. But anyway, I had great years with Little Beaver and Red Ryder. And I'd like to say another word about my dear friend John Wilder.
Sure.
John Wilder became one of the most prolific writers and producers in television. How about Streets of San Francisco?
Yep.
Shows like that. He wrote most of them. I ran into him one day along Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood. He says, "Tommy," and we hugged each other. Said, "Oh, the good old days, John." He says, "Look, I'm doing Streets of San Francisco." I said, "I know you are, John." I said, "You're my hero." He said, "Look, there's a featured role on one of the upcoming shows. You'd be great. Will you do it?" I said, "Of course." So I ended up doing a show for John Wilder.
Wow.
On Streets of San Francisco. Unbelievable.
Well, you know what? We have to have a part 2 of this. There's so much to talk about.
Well, it's nice of you to call me. I've enjoyed it. To bring back memories of the good old radio days is something I treasure. I thank you for thinking about me. I wish you the very, very best, and maybe in the future for Chapter 2. We'll do it again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm not daydreaming now when I sing the beautiful lyrics of this song.